You are listening to the For Flourishing's Sake podcast by Frederica Roberts. Welcome to episode 51. This is the fifth of the extended podcast episodes over the next few weeks, where you will be able to listen to the replays of the For Flourishing's Sake book launch events. Today, I bring you the first half of the third panel discussion of the book launch extravaganza. This panel was recorded live on the 18th of June, the day the Kindle edition of For Flourishing's Sake was published. The paperback will be published on Friday the 21st of August. Yay! And the fourth panel will be going out live at 12:30 p.m. UK time on the Happiness Speaker YouTube and Facebook pages and on my personal LinkedIn profile that same day. Head over to the book launch extravaganza page at forflourishingsake.com for full details of how to watch this event. So back to today's replay of part 1 of panel 3. I chaired the panel myself, and the panellists were Ian Flintoff, who is a positive psychology-based education coach, consultant and trainer at Affirm Consulting based in the UK. Serdar Ferit, who is the co-CEO and creative director at Lyfta based in Finland and the UK. Katrina Mankani, who is Director of Positive Education at Sunmarke School and Regent International School in Dubai. And Julie Goldstein, who is the principal at Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy in the USA. In this first half of the panel discussion, the panellists discussed their interpretation of positive education, character education, and the role of wellbeing in education overall, particularly in relation to educating for good citizenship and promoting inclusion, diversity, and social justice. You can watch back all the panel video recordings on the forflourishingsake.com book launch extravaganza page. As usual, you'll find all the links on today's episode page at forflourishingsake.com. Well, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is anymore. And of course, depending on where you are in the world, that will be different as well. But here in the UK, it's 7 o'clock, and welcome so much to the third panel today of the For Flourishing's Sake virtual book launch extravaganza. And I'm calling it an extravaganza because 3 panels in one day plus another one on the 21st of August is possibly the most I've pushed the envelope out on this kind of event ever. So I am beyond excited to be here with you today, with you watching and with the panelists in the virtual room with me, who've joined us from a variety of settings. So we have a number of people. You can see them there. I'll come back to you now on big screen. So we have somebody here who works in Finland and in the UK. We have somebody here who works in 2 schools in Dubai, another person who works with trainee teachers, particularly, and as a consultant with schools here in the UK, mostly in Norfolk. And then we've got somebody who works in Connecticut in the US as well. So quite a variety of people. And we've also got another person in the room that you won't see as a person, but you'll see this appearing and developing as we go along. And it's the wonderful Rebecca Osborne, who's a fantastic illustrator. I saw her do illustrations first at TEDx Norwich Ed a couple of years ago, and then at the Cambridgeshire Festival of Education last year. And she does brilliant work. So you'll see this developing as we go along. And we've got the ones from the earlier panels as well. So lots of really little snippets there of what we're talking about will actually appear on screen as we go. So we'll be with you for the next hour, but let me tell you just a little bit about who I am and why we're here. So I am Frederica Roberts. I am the author of For Flourishing's Sake, and I'm a former teacher. And before and since then, I've been working as a trainer and as a speaker and consultant in positive education and character education in schools. And I've spoken at conferences all over the world on positive education and positive psychology as well. My passion is really the whole school approach to positive and character education, and we'll be touching on that today. And that's, of course, the topic of the book, where we look at all the different aspects of whole school positive education. So we'll be with you for the next hour. And we'll be exploring topics around this from the different perspectives that we have in the virtual room today. So they're not all teachers directly, and that makes it quite an interesting mix as well in terms of experience that everybody brings into this. But what I really wanted to do today, just like in the book, I wanted to bring to life the stories and the experiences of the amazing educators that I spoke to as part of the research process for the book. I wanted to make these panels really very much about the how of how we do this. So again, bringing the stories to life on your screen today as you're watching this and as you watch this back later, so that you can really get the stories of how people are making this stuff work in practice, because a lot of what happens otherwise is very theoretical, but then you walk away and you go, yeah, but how do I do that in my school? So it's very much about the how. For Flourishing's sake, the book is out today. That's why we're doing this today. It's out as a Kindle. Now, it's an interesting time at the moment with COVID-19, and what that's meant for publishing is that there's been a bit of disruption. So I'm taking this as a great opportunity to have 2 book launch days rather than just one, because I'm greedy like that. So today is the Kindle launch, and then on the 21st of August, the paperback comes out. So you can get the Kindle. There you go. There's a link there that takes you to Amazon where you can get the Kindle version, and then you can get going on this stuff and explore a bit deeper everything that we talk about on these panels. And then of course you can get the paperback, which I have it, as do the contributors and as do the people that actually wrote the endorsements. But other than that, there are no copies in the world of this just yet, which is exciting. So this book would not have happened without the wonderful contributors that you're about to hear from this evening, and all the others that are not here in this specific panel. So I am immensely grateful to all of them for their time, not just today to be on this panel, but their time as I've interviewed them for the book, and then as they've checked that I've got everything right and so on. It's been a long, laborious process, and I'm immensely grateful to them for their time and their generosity of spirit in sharing what they're doing. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm also immensely grateful to Andrew Cowley, the author of the Wellbeing Toolkit, who wrote the foreword to the book, which is absolutely brilliant. And of course, a book would not happen without a publisher. So I'm very, very grateful to the brilliant team at Jessica Kingsley Publishers for making this happen, and everything from the initial idea to actually bringing it to fruition and turning it into a book has been fantastic, with both the editorial and production team. So thank you for that. And a huge thank you to the endorsers who read the pre-publication copies online in order to then write the endorsements to actually go into the book and onto the cover of the book. So thank you very much, all of you. So I'm going to bring all the panelists on screen now, so that I can introduce them briefly before they introduce themselves. So I will, in a moment, ask each panelist to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do, and where they do it, but also what their thoughts are on their understanding of positive education or character education or well-being education, all the different terms that we use around that, and however that applies to them and their setting and what they do, so their understanding of that. But I'll start off then. Our panelists I'll start with you, Ian, and I'll do one at a time as you introduce yourselves. I'll then move on to the next one. So Ian is based in the UK, and he is a positive psychology-based education coach, consultant, and trainer. And the company is Affirm Consulting. So welcome, Ian. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. Yeah, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be part of this. Okay, so very briefly, I'm the director of Affirm, as Fred has just mentioned, and my work is mostly with school staff rather than students, and around their well-being and resilience. And I operate a model that I developed following a master's in positive psychology around building resilience and well-being, and it draws obviously on the sort of history and science of positive psychology, and also utilizes some of my experience, which over 32 years was as a teacher in secondary schools, latterly for the last 20 or so years in senior leadership. I was head teacher of 2 schools. One was in London and one on the coast in East Anglia. which is where I'm now based. So that's really my background. And my work is very varied with schools, with school-based initial teacher training providers, where I run a program of training for all the trainees. I do some mentoring and tutor support there as well. I work with school senior managers in a range of schools there to develop positive psychology and particularly around helping schools to develop their own program for wellbeing. And also with senior managers and teams on a coaching basis around developing their strengths. So it's very much a strengths-based process. So my work is really quite varied, and will take its own course depending on what the client or the school requires. So fun work, and really interesting to see how it develops, and looking forward to this evening.
Thank you very, very much, Ian. And would you like to say a little bit about sort of your take on what positive education is, particularly as somebody who comes from positive psychology background and training as well? Quite interesting to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think my take on positive education is really, I mean, my background in education as a senior manager led me to really focus on those hard edge things to do with accountability and data and standards and performance. But I felt through my own experience and experience of people that I work with that there was quite a lot that was missing. And I think the positive education brings that focus on the whole child, the whole member of staff, that their well-being essentially enables them to be the best possible professional self they can be in terms of teachers. And I believe that the positive education angle begins to balance up some of what we're doing in education. And I think that there are some things that I think have gone fundamentally wrong. There's a lack of balance. And I think positive education brings that balance in between, tracking the achievement and the development of young people, but also looking fundamentally at their well-being. So the two come together.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. And I'm going to go to Julie next, if I may. So again, Julie, if you can introduce yourself and just say a few words, not just about what you do in the school setting, but also your thoughts on positive, or possibly in your setting, it might be more character education that you refer to it as, but your understanding of that and what it means in your setting.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. I'm excited to learn as I contribute. And I want to just give a quick shout out to Dr. Karen Feldman, who introduced me to you, Frederica. So, and we actually met at the International Positive Education Conference, the initial one. I came to where I am. I'm principal currently at Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. We're an early college arts and sciences themed middle and high school. But just a year ago, I had been leading Breakthrough Magnet School, which is a character education themed pre-K to 8th grade school, also in Hartford Public Schools. And that my path there, which I'll be very brief about, is I had started out as Teach for America's core as a core member of Teach for America a long time ago as a high school English teacher, where a lot of students were exploring their values and going through a lot of soul searching and values identification apropos of the Rodney King riot era, and realized that I really needed to get trained in order to feel that I could assist students. So that led me to Columbia University's Master's in Social Work program, where I developed a lot of skills, including psychodynamic psychotherapy, and worked with Teach for America as a mental health consultant. That then made me feel prepared to re-enter the schools, first in social work, but then quickly into administration, which is really where I'm happy to be, because I see schools as a place of so many needs are met in schools. For me, positive education formalizes something that many of us in my generation did not grow up learning explicitly. And I really feel that it's important for students to both be academically prepared through rigorous and enriching education, but also to be explicitly and implicitly taught the values that are inherent to positive education, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaningfulness, and accomplishment, as far as, and also health. I'm excited to continue this conversation and learn from my co-panelists. I hope that answers your questions. And again, thanks for having me.
It does. Thank you so much. And you have such a rich and diverse background as well that I'm sure we'll be unpicking a little bit more as we go along through the discussion, particularly in the context, of course, of what's happening around the world at the moment as well, which will be really interesting to bring into the discussion as well. And Katrina, I'd like to come to you next, if I may.
Thank you, Frederica, and it's lovely to be here with you and with Ian, Julie, and Serdar and Rebecca. So I'm the Director of Positive Education for 2 schools in Dubai, and I have been leading the character education program since 2010. But in 2016, we have opened a new school, one of the 2, called Sunmarke School, which is a positive education school from the start, from the word go. And I've been fortunate to work with amazing educators and administrators to develop the whole positive education ethos, which goes along everything that we do. So we call it the 3-tier positive education ethos. So we have proactive positive education, and this includes all our character and well-being programs that we teach explicitly and implicitly from foundation stage to year 13. And then we have a responsive positive education that includes all our counseling services and, all the psychological help. It's basically that boat which takes the student to the shore when, they feel that they're under the water. And then we have organizational positive education, and that is the mindset that helps us to ensure that our policies, whether with regards to students or staff, have the well-being of our all members and community at the heart. And in short, positive education for me is when you put the well-being at the heart and center of education.
Thank you so much for that, Katrina, and I'm sure we'll come back a little bit more in detail as well about the 3 tiers as well there, because that's a really interesting angle to explore in terms of looking at the whole school perspective as well. And Serdar, I'll come to you now. Serdar, your background is slightly different to everybody else's, but the reason I really wanted you on this panel is because the business that you run and the work that you do, I think, is such a lovely additional element that schools can bring in to support all of this stuff that Katrina and Julie have been talking about, and Ian, in terms of what education is really about. So if you could introduce yourself and what you do and what it is that you bring into schools, and then obviously if you've got your own thoughts on the sort of what positive education, character education is, then I would love to hear those as well.
Thank you very much, Frederica. Thank you for inviting me. I have actually been a teacher. I was a teacher for a decade, so it's not completely irrelevant. So today I run Lyfta, which is a Finnish company, and it's an immersive storytelling platform. And what that basically means is that we give children a window into the lives of people around the world, and they can literally go into somebody's home or workplace, look around it in 360 degrees, in the safety of their own classroom or home at the moment, click on things to familiarize themselves with a whole new place. And when they're ready, they can click on the human being in that place, bring that human being to life, a real human being, and then get a slice of their life in a short documentary film. And all of the stories on Lyfta are true stories, they're real people, and they're positive stories. And it's a way of sharing positive human stories. It's a way of modeling different skills and values and character strengths. And it's a way of taking children out of their sort of immediate reality and showing them that other realities and other perspectives exist in the world. So that's Lyfta in a nutshell. And my take on positive education is that we're trying to conjure up, nurture positive emotions, model positive relationships, and really put well-being at the heart of learning.
That's brilliant, and so much of what you said there that really encapsulated why when I came across Lyfta, when I was looking for contributors to the book, I was so keen to bring what you do into the book, because you've touched on so much of that. There's so much that you bring in terms of the character development, in terms of the emotions. And I'm so glad that you mentioned positive relationships there, because that's one massive cornerstone of positive psychology and positive education, of course. And so I suppose that there's a couple of things springing from all of your introductions there. So we'll take them one at a time, even though I think there's a lot of interlinking there. One of the aspects, I suppose, is looking at that aspect of the role of schools and educators in forming minds and children that become responsible citizens, that actually have, a valuable place in society, and that can work on undoing some of the injustices that we're seeing, and the lack of diversity that we're seeing, and everything that we've seen happening politically around the world, and particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement. And obviously, Julie, you were saying, you kind of came into what you're doing now from exactly the same problem years ago, and here we are again. And then I suppose we also can't ignore that whilst all of that is bubbling away politically, we're also in the middle of a pandemic, and that's bringing all sorts of challenges from a well-being perspective, and also perhaps giving us opportunities from a character development perspective for all of us, and perhaps opportunities for education, who knows, and to see some of the stuff we want to see. So taking perhaps that initial aspect of the community and citizenship, and how positive education, character education can support that, and then we can maybe move on to the whole school and the other aspects that involve that. So Serdar, I'll come back to you, because I'm really interested actually in what you've seen in terms of what Lyfta does at the moment, and how that's being used perhaps to help with the challenges we're facing.
Thank you, Federica. So we know that a lot of schools are using Lyfta remotely now, as simply as a way to share new realities with children. And over the lockdown period, we had a lot of good feedback from teachers and school leaders across the country, basically delivering remote assemblies, remote lessons, and just getting children to explore a new place and watch positive human stories. So over the last period, I think that's been our main contribution. From a child perspective, from a teacher perspective, we've also had had more training sessions, so more CPD than we've ever had before. We've seen a real spike in interest in Lyfta over this period as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think the other thing that can't be overlooked as well is particularly in light of the recent political developments and what we've seen with Black Lives Matter, is that actually what you're doing is giving that different perspective, because so many children perhaps haven't been exposed to lives that are different to their own, or to the skin color that's different to their own. And so by actually giving that window, you're really doing something quite relevant in that context, as well as in the context of positive education, would you say?
Yes, I mean, I meet head teachers across the country who say our children don't see the next town, and in some cases there's nobody who looks that different in their towns. They're quite monocultural, and Lyfta is one way of exposing them to different stories, people from different backgrounds. And our big dream is that by the time a child leaves school, if they've had the opportunity to go all around the world, to meet people from lots and lots of different countries, to see lots and lots of different cultures, lots of different perspectives, lots of different slices of life, that matrix of diversity will kind of normalize or usualize diversity. And we believe that they will then be able to see for themselves how interconnected we are, how interdependent we are, and that this wouldn't only have a positive impact on their own education, but also hopefully on society.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's a really big aspect actually of positive education, that it's not just about individual well-being, but about societal flourishing as well, and how we can support that. So I'd like to come to Ian on that as well, because I know, Ian, that you've mentioned to me off air when we've talked before about some of the feedback that you've had in local schools from that perspective, and how important this is.
Yeah, I was going to say Serdar's program is running quite a lot of schools in East Anglia. We're that little lump that sticks out on the east coast of England into the North Sea. Ironically, if you drew a straight line, of course, the nearest place to East Anglia would be the Netherlands rather than anywhere else in England, which is quite interesting. But certainly East Anglia is not terribly diverse. And one of my other roles, which is a different role, is as a vice chair in a governing body of a secondary school just around the corner in my local community. And we recently had a very powerful letter that was sent to us by some former pupils who felt that actually their education and the curriculum that they studied had not really prepared them for the world that they're now in, and they kind of regret the gaps that they see in their education. And I think that one of the things that I'm very keen to see schools doing is embracing the students in terms of looking at a curriculum that is much broader. And actually what Serdar's resources do is take children to see that they can relate to those individuals, they can see real similarities but also differences and celebrate those. And I think that sort of education is really needed, as well as in the secondary sphere, students being able to study a much broader range of things, like not just British history, but that, the history at the moment of, Britain's uncomfortable role in slavery, how we made our wealth through the empire and our exploitation of countries. So they're uncomfortable but very difficult things, but very important things for students to study. So I think all of that is really important. And I think, in terms of our staff, helping our staff to approach those issues, perhaps with better CPD, with different CPD that enables them to do that, so that we can start to face up to some of these fundamental issues. And I think if we want society to flourish as well as individuals, we really need to grapple with those.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your perspective on that. And Julie, can I come to you as well, because of what you said about, your background as well? I'd like to hear your views on how character and positive education are really underpinning the role of schools and educators to develop better citizens, I suppose.
Sure. Well, I'll do my best with that. I think with the Breakthrough Magnet School, it's got the unique curriculum that it has, focuses on the students' intrinsic motivation in regards to looking at challenges as opportunities to grow, taking responsibility for your own happiness and well-being in life, understanding integrity, contribution, and knowledge. And hopefully I won't divert too much from your question, but it really, those kinds of values. And then at my current school, we look at being honorable in our actions, mindful of diversity, thoughtful toward others, and contributing, creative in our expression, and ambitious in scholarly endeavors. And I bring up these two sets of values because those are things that need to be both caught through the actions of the adults who are in our schools, as well as taught explicitly in the curriculum, not only in specifically to those areas, but also in the content that we focus on. And those aspects of developing the intrinsic strength, the resiliency, the commitment to having purpose in life in our students during their developing years is really what will build them up both within the school community and then moving on outside in college and career. And I just really appreciate the aspect of at magnet schools, we intentionally integrate our student population because of our inherent flaws in our systemic racism in the United States. And we really have a responsibility, not only within the magnet schools, which is, again, integrates all of our students from a number of different areas within our state, both racially, culturally, ethnically, and location-wise, for the purposes of what Serdar, you had mentioned, to create true understanding and familiarity and appreciation, not even just acceptance, but appreciation for the variety of different ways that people approach life and their experiences, so that when they truly enter as adults into our global society, they're equipped to make healthy choices for themselves and also make a profound difference in our world. We really need to change the status quo, and it has to start with each individual. I guess as an example, in our school, building relationships, in our schools is what allowed us, when we did move into our closure and started to teach from a distance learning, students both at Breakthrough Magnet School, where I'm still very much in touch with the students, and our school, because we have the relationships that we do, we're able to continue to work on the values from the remote standpoint, and really what we want is, and we've had as a result a very high level of engagement in our remote learning. What you're doing with Flourishing's sake and making some of these sort of nebulous topics more practical, and being able to learn from all of the different people that you interviewed, Frederica, is just really exciting to me. I'm excited to bring it to my school, where we're going to be formalizing our character education in our middle school, high school here at Hartford Magnet. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you so much for that feedback, because that's really what I'm trying to do with the book and now with the panels to go with the book. And of course, with the podcast that I run as well for Flourishing's sake, which is to really bring this stuff to life, because we've all got kind of ideals and wishes and desires to change things. But what so many teachers say and school leaders, it's, if they're just looking at a school that they want to change and they go, well, where do I start? What do I do? And that's what I'm trying to unpack a little bit. So thank you for that. And I'm really excited that you're going to be bringing in more of a curriculum, and we can talk a bit about the curriculum side of things in a moment as well. But Katrina, I wanted to come to you as well on the same question that we've been talking about, because of the setting that you have there in your two schools. I suppose you've got the interesting side of things that you've also set up one school from scratch with positive education in mind. And it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on where the thought processes were there in terms of, the citizenship aspect of the pupils as well. And because I think you've got quite a multinational population in your schools as well. So that's quite interesting. And also, if I remember correctly, you're doing some amazing stuff on restorative justice, which I think also comes into that. So if you'd like to touch on that as well, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Our schools are in a unique context. We have, in each of the schools, we have up to 90 nationalities. We are British International School, and we teach in line with UK national curriculum. But at the same time, in every class, you would not have more than 2 repetition of a nationality. It's almost like, the whole world in a school. And that creates already an environment in which empathy, tolerance, and diversity are valued. In fact, just this year I was teaching a lesson in year 12, and I was showing them the danger of single story talk by Chimamanda Adichie. And then we were discussing, and the students said, we never even, we are in this school for too long. We're in Dubai for too long to actually think of a single story, because we're all different and we hear all different stories. So that helps with the citizenship, because they, from the moment they arrive to Dubai and go to school, they're global citizens. That does the job. So then our school's purpose is just to then help them to find the common human values, so that we talk about the human character strengths, human values, and human well-being, kind of. In terms of restorative justice, so as I was, I think, Federica, you were on my talk in this International Positive Education Festival a couple of years ago, where I mentioned that when we rolled out positive education in 2016 on the whole school level, we understood that there is a disconnect between what we preach and what we do, because the behavior system, the behavior policy was still very much old style, with detentions and with reprimandment and all those things. And we said that we need to rewrite it. So we basically got the team of staff members and students, and we went towards restorative justice approach, which we divided into kind of four main aspects. So it's, first of all, it's of course respect, and respect of four things. So respect of each other, respect of teachers, and teachers respecting students back, and respect of the facilities. And then it is responsibility for our actions. And if something happened, then that act needs to be repaired. So there is no punishment per se. The punishment is a reparation of damage. So we let's say if somebody drew on the wall, then they need to clean the wall. But what if they had hurt somebody's feelings? Then they need to repair the relationship. And we have teachers and members of SLT facilitating the discussion, and then the reparation is chosen by the student himself or herself. And then the fourth step is reintegration, so back into the community, learning from what happened, but at the same time not focusing on it. And the main paradigm shift of restorative justice is that there are no rules of the school. So there are no school rules. There are rules of the relationship, and the rules of the relationship are, again, universal.
Thank you for tuning in to the For Flourishing's Sake podcast. If you found this episode useful, please give it a 5-star rating on iTunes to help it reach more people, and please spread the word. Also, if you haven't already, remember to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. For Flourishing's Sake is available on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Deezer. The book by the same name came out on Kindle on the 18th of June and will be out on paperback on the 21st of August. You'll find it on all the major online book retailer sites. It's jam-packed with evidence-based strategies for whole school positive education, with case study examples from a wide range of schools from around the world. So why not order your Kindle copy now, or pre-order your paperback so you'll receive it as soon as it's published. If you'd like to get in touch with questions or comments, or to contribute to a future episode, please contact me via Twitter @FlourishingEd. You can also leave comments on individual episode pages on the forflourishingsake.com website. I look forward to hearing from you, and until next time, for flourishing's sake, have a great week.